Welcome to A Billion Realities. Here's your host, Jessica Gerlach. Welcome to A Billion Realities. Today we have Dave King on the show, whose life and mission literally revolves around saving lives. He's an advocate for addiction, depression, abuse, self-harm, and suicide. Dave is also a leader in two nonprofit organizations called Heart Support and iMatter. Hi, Dave. How are you?
Well, Jessica, doing very well. Really appreciate being invited to the show. It's an honor to kind of engage our friends across the big lake, you know.
It's excellent to have you on as well. I'm really excited to talk to you today and everything that you're involved in. How are you holding up with the quarantining, though?
Well, I want to ask you the same thing. We're getting more and more locked down by the day, as I know you guys are as well. It's it's still spreading. I think our graphs are still on the uptick. So, while that's going on, we're more and more shut down businesses like you guys. I mean, retail,
yes.
Outlets and bars and restaurants and, all of our music events. I mean, both Heart Support and iMatter do quite a lot of community events. So, we're all kind of temporarily shut down as well. So, and I know you guys are too. So, hearts go out to you guys. And I'm hoping you're all doing well.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's happening just on a global level at this point, for the most part anyway. Yeah. We're really close to Italy here in Serbia. Like, I can drive to Italy about 8 hours from here. So I think they're just taking the extra precautions, because you see what's happening in Italy. It went down pretty quickly there. And, we're under martial law now, and we have to be indoors by 8 p.m. So, and, just like you're saying, everything is shutting down, but they do have, patrolling. So we really can't be outside past 8. But I don't know anybody who's sick either. So that's a plus, right?
Me either. But we're starting to hear. I've got friends that have friends that are sick. So I guess it's better safe than sorry at this point. Yep.
Yeah. Extra precautions make sense, and got to do what they say, because we don't want to spread it. And I understand with the nightlife scene and kids going out, so that's why I'm pretty sure that's why they made like the 8 p.m. rule. So like the nightlife scene isn't spreading it, so it makes sense. But anyway, it's great to have you on the show. So I'll just tell the audience quickly. So I was speaking about opiates and screening one of my film projects at Elmira College, and I met Brian Cassetta, who's a doctor, who he came up on stage actually and said something really interesting about opiates. But we can talk about that later. So that's how I'm in touch with you, and I've also spoken to the Reverend that you have another project of housing for addicts and people who are suicide risk, I believe, right? So
they're all actually, the houses are recovery houses for folks that are walking through addiction, and the main focus is to give them kind of one of the last steps from walking out of a life of addiction to a life of recovery, and our success rate's pretty high. we're growing. We're looking to open up another house or two that get into the recovery a little earlier on in the process. We're still lacking housing for folks that just haven't been able to fully kind of get out of addiction yet. So we're working in that direction, and on our staff is one of the state's most degreed substance abuse counselors. It works actually works directly for me at iMatter. I've known him for 20 years, and he's kind of helping lead that initiative to kind of get folks, give them hope. Addiction's one of those things. People can get the idea that there's no way out, and it's just not true. But sometimes we need to just band together and help kind of build the path to getting out of addiction and the recovery.
That's amazing, and it's so true, especially when you're in active addiction. Everything feels hopeless. So the support is so necessary. So what was the driving force behind you getting involved in this type of work in the first place?
No, that's a great question. So I was a college and high school basketball and football coach for 27 years, and in my early days as a young college coach, I lost a player early to gang violence, and it really caught my attention as a young man, and even today, I still have a hard time reconciling that. But over the course of just my tenure as a coach, I just watched really our culture and the kids in our culture become more and more disconnected. Really, it feels like they had just less. They're just struggling with purpose and hope. And about a dozen years ago in our country, the statistics really started showing, a breakdown of what I'm going to call family. And I don't necessarily mean blood. I mean, even breakdown of, what we might call the wolf pack, people, just relationships that gather just because they have some commonality. And the statistics started showing, abnormally high suicide rates at age 10 to 34. Even today, it's still the second leading cause of death in America, suicide is. And so a dozen years ago, my friend Scott got in touch with me. I was coaching a couple hours north of where he was residing, and said, hey, we got to do something about this. So we founded the iMatter Foundation, began an initiative to really not just raise awareness, but provide a community for kids that are at risk, and family for kids that just are having a hard time, right? And did music festivals. We've grown to have one of the largest hardcore festivals on the East Coast. It's free. We bring kids in, and of course we did school assemblies and kind of town hall meetings, and then we took phone calls in the middle of the night, right? Both Scott and I and our team did.
Wow.
And in the early days, one of the bands we had in our early days, a band called August Burns Red, which is a huge band in Europe, by the way. Big shout out to Jake Lures and August Burns Red in Europe. It's just they're pretty well known there. Jake started Heart Support, and Jake and I began a relationship 10 years ago, and this last year I officially retired from my career, stepped down out of coaching, and I'm working full time with Heart Support. So we're doing this full time. We think our kids are worth it, So that's kind of how I got started. Got tired of losing kids and having kind of cars keep driving by on the way to work while we're burying our kids, and now so that's the start.
Wow, what a story and what an experience for you. And I'm sure, like the traumatic trigger that losing your friend to gang violence, that's something that's definitely life-changing. So what would you say is are the most difficult aspects of working with people who are struggling on such a deep level?
Boy, I get asked that a lot, and I guess, I can answer it in two ways. One is, we're dealing with some pretty high levels of trauma, right? And we've got losses. I mean, this is almost like a war zone here. So for me personally, I'm tired of watching, putting people in the ground. I mean, that's the tough part. I mean, we're not batting 1,000. We're losing people. I've lost what I call daughters. I've lost sons. I've lost kids that we've really helped and just built family, and they just couldn't quite get out of the lifestyle, or couldn't quite get out of the internal conflict that led to suicide or an overdose. So that's the hardest part there. I think from an outreach perspective, it's probably the toughest part to get a connectivity from trauma. We call it, like, we do triage. Folks that come in that are in traumatic situations, just alone, don't feel like they have people that care about them, or just caught up in addiction, or perpetual violence, or we're in heart support, we're kind of quietly getting more involved in human trafficking. So just getting people from that traumatic, to the triage level, the trauma of that, and then connecting them through kind of a process of some healing and purpose, right? I mean, one of the ways to get out of triage, get out of trauma, is to develop some purpose in life, and it's hard to stay patient to help folks kind of move from that process and lose kids along the way. To me, that's just the hard thing, and I just gotta get used to grieving a little bit, right? Just every now and then I gotta,
right.
I'm gonna lose somebody, and it's gonna hurt, and we've had Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Jess.
Oh, no, yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. But no, that was the reason why I asked the question, because I feel like that is the most difficult part, is when you really think that they're getting somewhere, and they probably are, but sometimes they revert backwards, and they just can't quite reach that sense of connectivity, because I do truly believe in all the research I've done and all the addicts that I've spoken to or had in my life or known, I do feel like there was a lack of deep emotional connection. So that's why what you were doing, resonated with me so much. So I can just imagine how hard that is, to watch them lose the battle, literally, in front of you. But let's talk about the rewarding aspect of it. So what are the rewards? I'm sure the emotional rewards, let's call them.
I guess if I was going to say for me personally, it's remarkably rewarding to watch what I'll call culture respond. We've had heart support. We've got an online community that's very vibrant. We're interacting with about 500,000 interactions a month with kids and young adults, which is a really big number. And one of the things that we're doing now, Jake and I in particular are doing now, is bringing this, what we'll call war to the streets. And it's very rewarding, to kind of meet people like yourself. We're by invitation. We're in our country. We're in LA by invitation, and invitation, a hot topic, right? We've been invited into the inner circle of the Pittsburgh Pirates, one of our Major League Baseball teams, to reach out to their kids in their school by invitation. Our National Hockey League, we're becoming friends with some guys in New York City from the New York Rangers who want to do something and invited us in. We're in Detroit. We're in Nashville. We're in Houston, launching some big stuff with a couple PGA Tour players, NFL players, and baseball players in Houston. So for me, it's really rewarding.
Amazing.
All people are looking for is somebody that has a language to speak what their heart is speaking, but they haven't been able to put a language to it yet. And that's what we bring. We bring a language to the issue, and like a plan of action to change a narrative in our country that says suicide is an option, or there's no way out of addiction, or our violence is just part of our national fabric, or human trafficking is just so underground we can't do anything about it. We're changing that narrative, and people and gatekeepers in our cities and our country are paying attention, saying, hey, we want in. And that's rewarding, because we can save some kids, which is phenomenal. Always it's one at a time, right? But if we can shift culture, if we can change the narrative in the atmosphere that says that to these kids that suicide is an option, there's the win. And we're going to do this together from a grassroots thing, and and even from a worldwide perspective. I'm such an honor to speak with you and your group tonight, because I'm excited to change culture a little bit and get out of this negativity accusation all the time. It just doesn't make sense.
Right. That's incredible. I love that you said, that you're changing the narrative and that you're taking action, because there is a lot of support out there, but I feel like that part of the problem was possibly before what you guys are doing, and maybe some others are doing now. Of course, others are doing as well, but maybe not on this level, is the lack of, they have support, but it's like, then what? And the fact that you guys have a house where these people can live and have that sense of family, community, and bond and love like everybody's family, I think that's just so important. So I love to hear that. How closely do you see the addiction and the suicide related, in the same setting? Is it often related?
Well, there's a loaded question.
I bet.
Well, I'll tell you, because it's in my view, it's very related, because it's indicating of a deeper root, deeper problem. Okay. That they're both, in my view, they're both symptoms of the same problem. And, one of the things we did at iMatter in the early years is we did a couple hundred interviews with young folks that had attempted suicide. And the biggest reason, and had survived it. So it was, we got permission from our medical community to sit down. They had said, hey, we'd love to talk about it. And the number one reason we heard was, we just didn't think anybody cared. And I think when we're really talking now addiction, there's a little bit of another face to it too, with this opiates, because the onset of the prescription opiates just put the numbers way off the chart. So we have people from some pretty, what we might call healthy family backgrounds or healthy places, that got addicted to opiates through non-traditional means. I mean, injuries, sports injuries. So other than that, but from our addicted community, the underlying root problem is the same thing: lack of hope, lack of purpose. Deep down, there's generally some trauma in there somewhere. Let's just get real. 1 in 3 to 1 in 4 girls is abused by someone they trusted, and it's 1 in 4 to 1 in 5 boys. I mean, that's trauma, man. That's something we got to go right at. We got to acknowledge that sometimes there's something sitting inside, deep inside, our sons and daughters, from a national and world perspective, that says, hey, I don't have value. Somebody I trusted, abused me. I don't know who I am. I don't know why I'm here. And I mean, to me, that's the underlying root thing we're going after, is maybe, beginning, a process of, hey, just something as simple as looking somebody in the eye and saying, hey, you're worth my time. And maybe we get long enough to say, I love you, unconditionally. I don't care about your behavior. I don't care what we agree or disagree with. You deserve unconditional love and acceptance, and we're here to provide you that, regardless of what your life has said up to date. We want you to know, by looking you in the eye, I mean, you are worth my time. You're welcome in my space. That is really what we're doing. At a national level, to combat that. Right.
Right.
That feeling
just
of
you saying that makes
alone.
me feeling emotional. I have
Sure.
to say, because I've known addicts, and even when somebody does try to love them, they don't really believe it at first. They don't want to believe it. They just don't. And so I can just imagine the impact. Like, it brought tears to my eyes when you just said that, like looking them in the eyes and saying, we love you no matter what, and it doesn't matter what you've done and all that. Like, that must be so unbelievably healing, especially in a repetitive environment, right, where they hear it all day, every day, and not just once here and there, right? So they're in an environment So, and back to what you said, sorry to just jump in about this as well. What you said about women or young girls being abused, I did watch a video recently that said, it was Teal Swan, I believe her name was, and she was holding some type of seminar, and every seminar she holds, she has the women, she asks how many women here have been abused in their lifetime, and they almost all always raise their hand. So, and then when she asks the boys or the men, you know, it's obviously a lot less, but there are a few here and there, but nothing compared to the women. So, yeah, all that trauma, right? It's just like they carry it with them, and then it manifests in all these other ways. So, anyway, sorry, back to what you were saying. Yeah.
Well, it's an important point, and for all your listeners that have gone through this, I mean, I want to, just even speak to that let's just say right off the bat that you didn't deserve that, and you do deserve love and value for more than what an abuser did, and community, right? I just want to clear the air with that, because it's a very important thing, and we're doing some underground work on the trafficking thing and some of the sex trafficking, and we're finding that at a high level, and I just love looking at daughters. I'm an older guy. I'm well on the north side of 56, so I'm looking at a lot of young ladies and just looking in their eyes and smile and say, hey, daughter, you're amazing right now. I don't care what your past is. I don't care what you're dealing with right now, but right now, you're an amazing daughter, and you're welcome in my space. I just love the narrative, right? And the more we do that, the more that message spreads, and the more we give ourselves permission to have some compassion and cut each other some slack, in particular some young people some slack. I think we can, at a grassroots level, just turn this culture a little bit, and provide some freedom to some kids.
That's incredible. So, if you were to give some suggestions to families who have really small children and are raising children, obviously, like what would your advice be to make that environment more connected? What can they do differently?
That's another good question. I mean, we do a lot of schools. I get asked that at our evening sessions with parents quite a bit. There's a couple things right off the bat. Number one, to moms and dads that are listening, I want to just speak that there's a reality that this can happen to us. That all the kids, on our board at the iMatter board, one of our board members lost a 12-year-old younger brother, to suicide. That in a healthy family. So one thing is just realize that, hey, we got to pay attention to our kids, right? We we could do everything right, and we're still going to lose some kids. There's no question about that. But I just want to put that out there that make sure you're paying attention to your kids. Spend time with your kids. Watch the amount of time on social media. Really kind of watch that. It's there's some breeding grounds there. If you have young daughters, there's predators out there. I'm sorry to put it out there. I wish I could sugarcoat this. I'm just not gonna. There's enough young girls getting preyed on that I'm declaring war on this. So just make sure your daughters are aware that there's predators out there, and teach them, how to stay safe. Another thing is if mom and dad, use the word "I love you" a lot. All these years in coaching, I've coached, I think, 1,107 games. I think I've coached 68 different teams, something like that. And all these years I coached, I had so many players that when I tell them, "Hey, I love you, son," they, eventually somewhere along the lines at graduation day, they said, "Coach, you're the first one that ever told me that. My dad never told me that." So dads,
that's
if you're in the habit
unreal.
of not telling you, it is common. Jessica, I hate to tell you. Dads, if you're out there and you're listening and you're not in the habit of saying "I love you" to your kids, boy, that's a good habit to start. It's hard to say that once they're checked out, right? So there's that one.
So sad to me.
And probably
that's
the
shocking.
biggest one now is, adopt your kids' friends too, right? If your kids are bringing in friends and your kids have friends that are struggling, just go ahead and give them time. Give them space. If the more that we can just in our own spheres of influence impact kids that just come into our daily lives and just give them the courtesy and the eye contact and a smile, whether you know them or not. That eye contact and smile makes a big deal to a kid. It tells a kid that, hey, maybe I'm okay. Maybe it's good. It's amazing what eye contact and a smile will do. Right? So
wow,
those
incredible.
are the big things. Tell your kids you love them. Pay attention to what they're doing. Yep.
Mhm. Yeah.
Take care of your daughters. Make sure there's predators. Know they're predators, and
Yep.
eye contact and smile.
And there's predators for boys too. Unfortunately, it's just as scary.
Yep.
I feel like these days. There's pedophiles.
Yep.
It's just they say that there's thousands living in, really close vicinity to people's homes, and they've done studies on that, and it's just shocking to me. So, even I have 2 boys, and I'm always trying to just make sure that they're not connecting with strangers on social media or, it's scary. So, I mean, would you say that you think that the biggest trigger of addiction is, a lack of emotional connection, or do you feel like there's other triggers that are on an equal level?
I might be a little slower to respond to that one. On addiction, it seems like it's like a Pandora's box. I mean, it can start from neglect, which would be what I would call the biggest one. I mean, I personally didn't get in full blown addiction, but I'm 56. I grew up in the United States in the 1970s, and I got pretty heavily involved in marijuana and the pot scene, and tried all kinds of different things in my early days, and if I can, when I look back at it, there was an element of neglect. There was an element of rebellion towards abuse. For me, I was a young guy, pretty ticked off at the abuse I had to walk through, right? So, that was kind of the triggers for me. The big one I would say is neglect. I didn't have a role model come into my life and say, hey son, there's another way. I didn't have a coach, and as decent of an athlete as I was, coaches were more worried about their own coaching resumes, not about, my personal well-being. And that was just the way it was when I was a kid. And
Wow.
that to me, that was the big impetus for me. And so it goes neglect, right? That to me is probably the biggest. As I listen to the stories of the sons and daughters I come in connection with that are suffering an addiction, it does go back, to hey, my mom or my dad or my uncle or my coach or my teacher or my pastor or whoever didn't care about me. I started hanging around with the wolf pack,
And and neglect. Yeah, of course.
Right.
Wherever you're getting that, filling the void. And neglect is a form of, it is emotional trauma for a child.
Yeah.
Because
sure.
a child just wants to be loved and cared for and important, feel important. And so, neglect is definite emotional trauma. So that definitely makes sense to me. So how long now have you been heavily involved? You said it's been about 10 years.
We began to build the iMatter Foundation in 2009. So we're kind of moving into. So this is on the festival side. This is our 12th year, I think, and we've built our festival into kind of the largest hardcore festival on the East Coast in the United States. And it's free. So I think we're the only free festival. People nuts crazy enough to do this. So we don't have like a big donor. It's all it's all stakeholders, people giving $1,000 here and $500 there, and some corporate
Wow.
grants and the small corporate grants. I mean, we don't, and our track record's good enough that now our government agencies and our local government agencies are starting to kick in too. So they've seen that what we're doing is working. So yeah, it started probably a dozen years ago, and then, Heart Support has started, I think, 2011 is when they launched. They built their online community for the first number of years, and now we've really gone national. And I'm talking to folks in Europe and Serbia. I'll tell you, we're coming. August Burns Red is a big band in Europe. The founder of Heart Support is got a wife from Finland, and so he's on my desk. He has challenged me to grow into Europe as we can. So we'd love to come across the big lake.
That's amazing. Yeah, you definitely should. So, in your experience, all these, the 12 years that you've been heavily immersed in this type of work, where do you fall in the evolution of that at this point? Like, how did you start out, and how much have you learned, and how different are you than when you started, in how you interact with these?
Now that's the first time I've been asked this, and yeah, so we were absolutely clueless when we started this thing. All we knew was kids were taking their lives, and we just couldn't stand by and do anything. So we've done all kinds of goofy things. I think the first several years with our festival, we lost buku money. I had to personally finance the bands, I think 3 years in a row, to the tune of maybe $50,000 out of my pocket. And by the last time, I didn't even have it, so I had to spend my daughter's college education money and part of my retirement package just to pay the band. So we took some time learning that. And then, just developing the language, right? So just getting our sense, our pulse on just what the problem is. I mean, there's a lot of people that are working the problem, but getting a sense of just, what the root causes are takes time, and it's not easy conversation pieces. Right. So like, if you don't want to have a hard conversation, it's going to be hard to really get into the root cause of why so many kids are checking out. So it's definitely taken us time to do that. And then the credibility, right? This is not going to be put into a microwave and 2 minutes later have the dinner. It is a slow cook oven that takes time to, really generate relationships. To build into the community that, hey, we're here not just for good, but we mean business. We're not playing around, right? So I mean, our business cards say, excuse my language, but we really give a shit. So we're not interested at all in playing playing around here and do touchy feely things. We want to change statistics, and so it's been a gradual. I'm nowhere near the same person I was a dozen years ago. I would say significantly smarter, and even more driven. Because I can actually see the light at the end of the tunnel. I actually have vision that we can turn this thing. And in the early days, we just knew we had to do something. Now
it's amazing.
We think we know what to do, right?
Right, and you were instinctively. Yeah, it sounds like originally, it was instinctive. It was like you said, that urge, like we got to do something. But now, you're with all the experience. It's like you have so much structure in it as well, along with the instinct. Yeah. So that's amazing.
Yeah, one guy was a youth pastor, and I was a coach, and so each of us had interactions with a different demographic of kids, and we just started listening, and kids will talk, you'll listen.
Incredible. So let me ask you this: how do they come to you? Like, how do they come to you? Those homes that you guys provide for the addicts or suicide risk. How do they find you?
Yeah, a lot of number of ways. So obviously we have all our social media engines going. With Heart Support, we're on Twitch TV. We've got a pretty large following there. We do a fair amount of social media postings on Instagram and Facebook and a bunch of blog series and over time and we've done tours. So like we have a group goes out with bands and there was tours with bands and the bands kind of promote us from stage. We've done Warped Tour. We've done a lot of festivals. So over time, we've earned the kids know who we are, right? And they know we're the real deal, right? We know we're not trying to sell a bill of goods. We don't have an agenda. So I don't have this secret agenda that's trying to either put my religion on them or my opinions on them or my thoughts on them or make them make decisions the way I want to make them. My only agenda is that they feel unconditional love of a dad. That's it. I have no second agenda. And when you only have that as an agenda, that a kid feels accepted from a dad, now there's a trust level brought up. So we're pretty well known. And that's kind of the largest area. And then in the communities we work in, we build corporate community and faith-based leaders, city leaders, begin to funnel kids to us. So like our houses are almost fully recommended by the governmental agencies here in Elmira. So that's a big plus. We've earned it, right? So they know that, hey, these guys aren't messing around. These guys aren't in it to make skim off the top. They're in it to help change lives, right? So
exactly.
So that's that's kind of it. In the early days, it was word of mouth. I mean, hey, they did a free hardcore festival with the top bands in the country. At a big number of bands, and they're doing it for free, and nobody could figure out why that is. And I'd go out on the stage and just look at them and say, hey, I love you guys. Who do you want next year? And that's it. That's my message. I love you. Who do you want next year? And over
this is
time,
so amazing.
It's I've had bands come up, headliner. They usually go out before a headliner. I go out and stand out there, and in the early days, you'd say, hey, I love you. Who do you want next year? Now I don't even bother going out there anymore because I can't get over at Edgewise. The kids are just yelling and screaming. They won't even be able to hear me because they know I don't have an agenda for them, right? Now in the field, we have a couple hundred volunteers that are there to listen. We have a Tell Us Your Story tent where kids can come in and say, hey, this is what happened to me, and we can talk through their trauma if they want to. A lot of kids come to festivals and they don't really want to deal with trauma that day, but they'll come to us, a week later. They'll come through the Heart Support channels, and that's why Heart Support is powering so many festivals. Heart Support is going to power the iMatter Festival this year, right? So that we provide that background of community for the kids that come to our festival. Say, hey, yeah, I've got some stuff going on, but I'm here to have a good time today. But tomorrow, I'm going to reach out to Heart Support and say, hey, can you help me? That's
excellent.
That's the process. And
I haven't heard of anybody doing anything like you guys are doing, actually. So this is just incredible for me to hear all of these details, how intricate it actually is, because I actually didn't know it was, this on this level. And I think it's just amazing that, you're providing that type of support where, like you said, religion doesn't matter. Nothing they've ever done matters, or nothing matters. The only thing that matters is their well-being, and they're all loved, and so amazing. So what?
I want to give a shout out to.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Just a quick shout out because I definitely don't want to put the perception out there. This is just one or two or three of us at the top, and we might be the architects. But this isn't possible without the communities themselves coming together and say, hey, yeah, we want in. And so we have hundreds of volunteers, of people that dedicate tremendous amount of time and reply to the kids on our support walls and show up at the festivals and love on kids and buy them meals and buy them bottles of water with no agenda. We train them on how to do this. So I just want to acknowledge that. The corporations that give us $1,000, I mean, you might think $1,000, but man, you get enough corporations giving us $1,000 or $10,000, and hey, we can start doing something with that, right? So I just really want to put a big thank you and really encourage you guys But this is always going to be a community event. Our success is getting the community together to saying, hey, we're going to do something about this. And then we can bulldoze where we need to bulldoze and, pound through some red tape when it's time to pound through some red tape. But I just want to acknowledge that, thank of all the communities, L.A., Houston, Detroit, Nashville, Pittsburgh, New York, Elmira. It's an honor to work in these cities.
I bet, when the community comes together, it's just amazing. Yeah, so I was just curious, there are a lot of people out there that don't have insurance or, they can't afford therapy, counseling of whatever type they need. What is your advice to them?
This is I call this our biggest hurdle, really from a national, probably worldwide perspective, because in our country we've got a lot of we've got to stay conscious of liability concerns, right? So we don't have trained professional counselors. We've got one on our board that kind of keeps us legal, right, and make sure we do what we do, but we don't cross over into professional counseling, and then we refer people to professional counselors is really the way we've been doing it. But the board, our board in particular, Heart Support, has recognized that we can't continue on this way, that we really do need to build a bridge from triage to purpose, and that bridge is healing. And we need to engage professionals in the healing process. And so we're super on the front edge of doing that. I think you recognize that a lot of people, either they can't afford it or we don't trust it. So we've got two hurdles there. So we're kind of very early in the stage of building a base of professional counselors who will donate time to handle the influx of kids that need professional counseling, and it is our biggest hole right now. But we know it.
Wow.
And we've got we're rather aggressively doing something about it. Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. Like everything is an evolution process, right? So that's the stage that you're at now. So, and that's okay because you guys are expanding and you're just helping more and more people. And I could see that coming up. And that was one of the things I thought of because I do know a lot of people who have been in that situation. And that's when they need even more support, though, because they can't afford or they don't have insurance, so they get therapy. But I feel like that's the most important time for them to have groups like you guys or any type of support or outreach, any type of group support or even just one person. But you know what I'm saying? Like for them to have that, to fall back on when they can't afford certain types of therapy. But
I'll give a little shout out to BetterHelp. We've got an organization in our country called BetterHelp that offers their services, and so that's where we've been kind of funneling people through to them, and they've been great. But it's still it's still limited. There's still some things they can't delve into, and we're not even beginning to even close service the amount of kids that are coming through our support wall, with what we're doing.
Right. But it seems to me like you guys are taking the best route that you can with what you're allowed, which is we love you no matter what, and we're here for you. Like, what's better than that, right? Because a lot of people, after addicts go through their active addiction phases, they lose a lot of people and the trust of a lot of people because things happen. They do things that they steal from people, and I'm close with many people who've gone on that road, and they break a lot of bonds, they burn a lot of bridges, and then they're really left even more alone than they even were before they started, with their addiction. But when you deal with people who are suicidal or, just self-harming in any type of way, and do you ask them, like, what is the main reason why you don't want to live anymore? I'm just wondering, like, is there a commonality there, or is it just really different case by case?
Well, there is some commonality, and it's a good question. We use we use some training here that really gives us permission to do one question. Hey, are you considering self-harm? And so the first thing in that is the first thing we do is we establish that. And if you are, well, let's get you some help right now, right? Because we move right into immediate emergency room type stuff, right? Okay, we want to get you safe. And then when it's safe, then we start building the bonds of relationship. And I had I've had so many stories, but it's interesting, Jessica. This isn't I'm not sure I've really said this out loud too many times, but one of the things I've found is that there's a suicide language in the atmosphere that we gotta get rid of. I've run into a number of folks that have had a traumatic kind of it's been circumstantial. It's been something that was that it on the surface didn't seem like that big of a deal. Hey, my girlfriend broke up with me, my boyfriend broke up with me, but I've heard this thing that I can just check out. Right. So a lot of times, just asking, you're right, asking, hey, what is the cause? A young man I'm even close with today that I've formed a personal bond with, I met from a mom bringing me in. He was a ball player local here. And, hey, she came home from a business trip and caught him in the act of, trying to end his life. And, 11:30 at night on a Sunday night, I'm with the young man. And, start building a relationship, and turned out, his girlfriend broke up with him. And as I've spent time with him now over the last couple of years, that was it. And you kind of want to say, whoa, how is that possible that,
Right.
something like this could lead to that thing? Well, it's because it's in the air. And, and I'll just kind of leave that there for now. But then you have the other narrative, which is, now the much more sinisters, which are, one, I don't think anybody cares for me, or two, I'm a burden to everybody. Those are the two big ones. Of all the things I've heard over the years, is those two right there, the huge red flags to me. Now, we're losing kids for some pretty, what you and I might call silly things, and then they're certainly not silly to someone who decides to end their life. Don't hear me wrong there. But it's a short-term trauma or a short-term issue, and they're making a long-term decision. But the two danger spots are that right there. Whenever I hear, hey, nobody cares, which I've heard a lot, or I'm a burden to everybody, those are the big red flags to me. Now we're gonna go right at that and say, okay, I care. And I care enough that I'm going to walk through this with you, or I'm going to have some of my team walk through this with you, or we're going to get you, engaged, right? We're going to walk through what's going on in there, and just take the time to learn the root cause.
Incredible. But even the people who, like the first ones that you mentioned, somebody breaks up with them, and they don't feel that their life is valuable. That still, to me, stems back to trauma and a lack of connection, and then they finally find a connection with one person, maybe the first person ever that they did, and they identify themselves, their existence, and their happiness relies on that connection because they've possibly never had it before. So I can kind of understand, it's a very codependent, and, it's like filling that void again. You finally fill the void, but it's with a person. Some people do it with drugs. Some people do it with dopamine rush. Some people do it with relationships.
Right.
So I'm just, trying to get into the psychology behind it, because like you said, for the average person, that's not a reason. But to a person who's never felt loved in their lives, and then they finally do, that's the end of the world for them. Like, how am I going to live without
exactly
this? Yeah.
Yep. And it took a good couple of years of this young man to, just kind of reaffirm, hey, son, you'll be okay, right? Just somebody. Again, you're worth my time.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, do you have your own children?
Yeah, I've got a 29-year-old that's working for an ambassador corps in Washington D.C. and our youngest daughter is 12. Right here we had spread between, we've had two only children. My wife and I have. So, and both of them are big time into the scene. They both help out at iMatter and Heart Support. They both got big hearts. My oldest daughter has a lot of heart for some of the stuff over in the Middle East. She does some stuff there.
Wow.
And some of the camps, has some heart for some of the kids in some of these camps, and she's doing a lot of kind of work there. So
that's
very
why I
proud
was
of
asking. I was amazing. I was asking because of that. I figured they would be involved, with you being their father.
Yeah.
So, and it must be amazing for them to, grow up giving back like that. So I think that's just really rewarding. How often do you see addicts who are recovered, or even people who were suicidal and they're not now, and they help others and give back and get involved? Is that really common?
That's a great question, and yes, it is very common. It is most common. I think the stats that we talk about, 50,000 suicides a year and 70,000 overdoses a year in our country alone, get overshadow the successes that are just, off the charts. So it is most common, and sometimes it does take a lot. I mean, I want to just encourage, folks dealing with it, that are listening to this, dealing with addiction. I know many people that went through that whole process of detox, get into a detox house, 30-day rehab, and into a long-term rehab 6, 7, 8 different times. And somewhere along the line, it finally caught. I just don't quit. That's what I want to tell you. Just listen to me. Countless stories now, and a lot of times purpose is a big deal. So a lot of times folks say, hey, I found I can do this, and now I can help others by being an example of what can be done. One of our biggest partners here in the area, 7 times she went through that, wash, rinse, spin, repeat, detox,
right,
and then into rehab, and then into halfway house, and then, leave the halfway house early and fall right back into it 7 different times over the period of like 5 or 6 years. And, 30 years old, finally just, something said, hey, enough of this, right? And so I really great question. And suicide, the same thing. I mean, once we realize that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, that's really what kicks in. Hey, wait a minute, this can and will get better if I keep at it. Then, and I know many people, way more than even attempt, that said I was very suicidal, and I hung in there, and sure enough, over some time, and it does sometimes take some time to work. Man, I'm really glad I didn't make that decision. I just did a conference, and I was a speaker, and I had a lot of tears in the house, I will tell you. And one of the ladies that came on stage afterwards said I was one of Dave's statistics. And
wow.
I'm so glad I didn't do it. But I had made the decision. I just couldn't handle the trauma anymore. And she said, I just want to, and tears all over the place. But it is most common. It's a great story.
That's amazing. I have seen a lot of that as well, but you're obviously a lot more heavily immersed in this, and so I definitely wanted to know that. And I feel like it's a necessary part of certain types of people's recovery. It's just like another step in their recovery, it seems like. So, and I think that when they get involved and help others who were, when they were once in that situation themselves, it helps to keep them on the right track, I feel, because it's a reminder of the dark place that they were in, and and they just lifting others out of that dark place that they were once in. And I feel like it's a constant positive reminder of staying on the right track, but also being empathetic because they've been through it and they want to make sure that others don't have to experience the same thing. So I think that's great.
That's super good. Super good.
Yeah. Yeah. So the housing, how are you doing with the housing? Is it you said it's full, or you're trying to open more? How does that go?
Boy, I'm going to speak personally on this one. I think from the outside it looks pretty successful, but for me, I wanted to grow faster, right? So I would have to say I'm a little impatient with it, right? But that's my nature anyway, right? I kind of I want more impact. So we're our success rates are high. We're partnering with a group in our community with the houses that provide direct support to what it's called a cohort program. So it was an application process. So we had 100 people apply, and they get direct support. Us with housing, and if we can't place them in our house, then we work to find places for them in the different housing options that are available. There's work. Training, there's daycare, there's transportation, there's medical help, and there's counseling. There's addiction counseling. So that's what they sign up for, is just kind of intensive help. And it was an experimental program. A bunch of us launched a year and a half ago, and we have a very high success rate to folks getting out of addiction. So that study there has really lit the fire to me to build more houses and have more houses, but it takes funds, and so far we're not funded to the point. We're private. I'm not really sure we're interested in going through the hoops of having New York State housing. There's just a lot of red tape that we're not sure we want to do, and we want to we think what we're doing is working, and we don't necessarily want to do what other people are doing. I guess I'd covertly say that way. So we're limited by funding, but not by vision. I'd put it that way.
All right. Well, you don't want to break a formula. You don't want to change a formula that's working, so that makes sense.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to touch on today is post-traumatic stress disorder. People, I feel, are so undereducated, if I can say it so frankly, about post-traumatic stress disorder and how many people are actually living with it from trauma, from abuse, from neglect, and they most people do associate it mostly with war or extreme violence, which obviously is, it creates PTSD. But, how many people come into these housing units, and they're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder? And do you realize that they are? And what do you do with a person who's in that state of mind?
Wow, you're opening up a new one here. Yes, to the recognition about PTSD and the role it plays in our mental health of our friends and our family and the folks we're working with. Yes, I am a veteran, and it is most commonly associated with veterans, and I deal with that on a veteran standpoint, up close and personal. I also deal with this. I want to talk a little covertly here. but on the level of abuse, in particular sexual abuse, and physical abuse of all kinds, I'm sure, and maybe mental abuse. But I deal with it more on anything is the sexual abuse things that we've talked about earlier, and it's very real. And it's remarkably important to recognize and not disregard, because that shows up in panic attacks and high levels of anxiety. Just all the ways. And I will tell you that I just have, personal experience with people very, very close to me, and dealing with these things. And for me, I mean, it's, the more severe, the more important it is to have professional counseling. I'm a huge advocate on professional counseling. I've got, people that I'm very close to that are really, are, from the outset, you might say, you might not notice. They're what we might call, and I don't necessarily know if I like the way I'd put this, but what we might say is productive, members of society, even though, that's kind of I don't really like the way that sounds. But,
I know what you mean, though.
Yeah. Right, but internally, when they go home in a quiet place, they're severe panic attacks. So we are, at Heart Support, we're right now in the process of forming a for veterans in particular, a PTSD arm, and also simultaneously. For people suffering the effects of abuse, kind of another avenue, so that when folks come into our family, our community, and we have a place to plug them in right off the bat. Say, okay, let's just get real for a minute. You got to deal with this trauma. We got to do some triage stuff here, and not on your timing, and professionally for sure. I mean, we don't really want to tackle this ourselves. We want to make sure that the professional community and people that we trust are dealing with that. It's a great question for your listeners in particular. If you know somebody suffering from PTSD, if you're suffering from PTSD, please accept our best thoughts for you. And, as you're ready to deal with this, give yourself permission to go get some counseling. It's important. Find somebody you trust and just go ahead and lay it out. I will just kind of close my thoughts with two stories, and actually I'll say stories of stories. One of my closest nephews was a 6 combat tour veteran in the Wild West of Afghanistan and Iraq. So I'm the guy that walks with my nephew, right? And then I'll just put it this way: I've had one of my close associates read to me her trauma, and as she confronted, and then I was there when she confronted her abuser of 8 years when she was a little girl, right? So this stuff's real, man. I mean, wow. It's not the stuff we want to talk about. It's not the stuff that we put on, primetime television, but it's the stuff that's making our friends and our family and our sons and our daughters and our brothers and our sisters, suffer. And so let's address it, man. Let's go at it. Let's show some compassion here, one to another,
Definitely. Post-traumatic stress disorder is no joke, and like you said, it manifests itself in ways where you might not know that the person is going through that, but if you're looking for the signs, you'll see it, because like you said, the anxiety, the panic attacks, nightmares,
lack of trust. I mean, trust issues, right?
Fear.
Right. Absolutely. Fear-based. I literally don't trust, I trust 2 people, 3 people is commonly what I hear from, folks with severe, you have severe trust issues, claustrophobia, all that stuff, right? Yep.
Yeah. Nothing even reminds them of what gave them PTSD in the first place, that's when it gets really bad because they'll relive it, and that's so I just really wanted to bring that up. I think it's amazing that you're dealing with some of that topic as well within the organization. So
Yes.
That's great.
Very important.
Yeah. So you said you wanted to share another story, right? Before our time is up, you want to share another two stories?
That was both stories. I don't want to get too in depth on either one of them, but those both stories. One my nephew, and then one my close friend who shared her trauma with me, and I sat through. I was in there for I think protection. When she confronted in a professional's office, she confronted her dad, and I was in there for that.
Oh wow, that's intense. Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't all that much fun.
No, definitely not. But
No.
it shows that she trusts you because that's a hard thing to talk about and reveal in the first place.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's so amazing when they can finally get to the point where they can talk about that, because I know a lot of people suffer with it for years, and sometimes they don't really know what's going on, and they don't really know what post-traumatic stress disorder is, especially if it was from abuse, right? Of course, with war and those type of bigger events, that's different, but with abuse, a lot of the people don't know that they're suffering from that later on. And then when they do realize it, it's just like they have to process everything. And then finally, if they get it up to a point with it to talk about it, I think it's so great because it does get better. It does get better with therapy.
Yep, Jessica, that's a really good point. Yep, and we can give. It's good for your listeners to hear that. Give yourself permission to at your timing when you're ready. Deal with some things and share with somebody just what's going on and let them hear you. And I love what you said. I mean, healing is available. Healing is there. And then finding purpose. Is a really important part of that structural healing. The folks that I know that have really, are on, kind of the north side of the worst of PTSD, and I know many. A lot of their therapy is in purpose. Hey, we're going to get involved in something. We're going to do something about this thing that broke my heart, and now I know it's breaking somebody else's heart. So we're going to do something. I really want to encourage your listeners with that.
Right.
Get involved.
That's great.
Right.
Yes. So do you guys teach any type of meditation or relaxation techniques for these people who come to you for help or shelter even? Are there ways that you help them to get grounded or calm themselves down, if they have prayer or anything like that? I was just curious.
Well, it's interesting. It's a great question, and there's two answers. One from a corporate answer, from a heart support standpoint, iMatter standpoint. We're in that process now of developing that healing comportion. It's the part that's kind of we've got to fill in. We're very good at dealing with the trauma and the triage. We're very good at purpose. That middle section of healing is the area that we're kind of continuing developing from a corporate level. From a personal level, I teach it all the time. Like I do a lot of stuff. I'll blog on. I'll just say, hey, this is what I do, and I've had a life for close to 10 years now. I've set aside, close to 8 hours a day of what, someone might call meditation. What I do is, 10 o'clock at night to 6 in the morning, whether I'm sleeping or not, I shut down. I don't allow, and people around me, will attest to my wife. Everybody around me knows I do this. I shut it down. I do not allow the worries of the day to consume me for 24 hours. I'm just not doing it. I limit it to 16 hours. So 10 o'clock,
Wow.
I'm shut down. I don't think business. I don't think family. I don't think, there's nothing else to get in. I don't. Now for me, I don't pray. I don't have a wish list. Hey God, would you do this, this, and this for me? I don't, listen to things in the background. I just get myself quiet and I just say, okay, here I am. And I just posture myself and position myself to listen and not have all the stuff come into my ears. And, the 10 o'clock one's a moving target. Sometimes it's 11, sometimes 11:30. But what it never is, I don't, this is what I'm very religious in. 6 o'clock, I don't turn on until 6 in the morning. So if I wake up and I get out of bed at 04 or something along those lines, I'm going to stay in that place. I don't allow my day to start any earlier than 6 in the morning. So
that's
like, but
amazing.
at 6. Yeah, it's allowed me to, cut out, really the negativity that culture wants to barrage me with. I mean, we get hammered with so many thoughts, so much stuff, some our own, some other people's, media, and the stuff in the atmosphere and all this stuff. I found the only way to kind of purity in my thoughts is to shut down all the noise. And
right.
and I shut down things by tone. So like if I hear something in my head that's guilt or shame or condemnation or accusation, I'm already like, wait a minute, that tone's not welcome. I mean, I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna go at some things, right? I'm dealing with human trafficking, so I'm looking for some body count here. I'm sick of it, right? I'm sick of burying my kids, so I'm gonna be pretty aggressive, right? But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to move in guilt, shame, condemnation, and accusation. I'm going to move into restoration, right? Reconciliation. I'm going to if I can, I'm going to do my best to dry up the resource and change a narrative. But I'm not going to have something in my ear going rant, rant, rant all the time, speaking all this negativity talk. I'm just not listening to it.
Yeah, and that's amazing because that's perfect. I think that's so important and so healthy, and it just speaks of the power of the mind and as well controlling those, random thoughts, right? And not lowering your vibration to a fear or shame or guilt-based energy because you can't manifest the things that you want when you're vibrating on that frequency. So I think that's great. That's, that's your own form of meditation is by shutting that out and quieting your mind. So I love that. I think that's really good advice for the audience too, or something to take away. Definitely to me speaks of a form of meditation. That's great.
Yep. And what's the next? Do it for 15 minutes. If you can't do it for hours, it's okay. Right? Don't hear, in your ear that you lack. Hey, try it for 15 minutes. Try it for half an hour. Hey, for this half an hour a day, I'm just going to shut down all the noise. And, maybe it's like I'm just going to sit here and say, hey, I have value. I have purpose. Right? Maybe self-talk. Right?
Absolutely. And what I tell people a lot, because I do like to meditate, and I try to remind myself to stay in that zone at least every day for some amount of time every day. But usually I'll do it for half an hour or more if I can. But it's important because we're with our energy and our thoughts, we're manifesting, throughout the day with random thoughts as well. So with intention, we can manifest the things that we actually want because we're focused on it, so it has more power. And I think it's just important. Yeah, it's important for us to also, like you said, is, a lot of us have racing thoughts or anxiety in the world we live in today. It's pretty common. So being able to focus and eliminate those random thoughts or racing thoughts, let's call them, and focus on the things that you want to see and that you want to feel. And I'll just throw this in here too. Binaural beats are amazing because you can listen to them with meditation music if you like music while you're meditating, and they're set to a certain frequency. So there's a
I've heard that.
physiological
Yep.
response. Yeah. And so people who have a hard time relaxing or getting to that place of letting things go, this is very beneficial to those people who have a hard time doing that, because it already begins to change your physiological response, which starts to change your feelings or your energy, from stress to calm or whatever it is that you want to do with your binaural beats, because there's different frequencies for different purposes. But obviously, a lot of people use them for relaxation. So yeah, it's just one way of calming yourself. It's something you can do on your own, and it's free, and it's on YouTube, and it's a self-help tactic. So I like to share that.
Super good.
Yep. Yeah. Anyway, got any other? Yeah, I would love to hear any other good stories you have, like about the shows, and do people come up to you and speak about their own? I know you said some people don't like to talk at shows, like the music shows, about their problems, but I'm sure some come up and are probably really grateful for everything you're doing. And what is that like? That seems like it would be very rewarding.
Yeah, well, it certainly is, and for again, all the listeners that are looking for some some ways to get involved, it is as we begin to be known for somebody who cares, right? I don't have I've got a resume, I've got all these things. I can give a qualifications brief, or I can go up to a kid and say, hey, this is why you should listen to me. And all that stuff just gets thrown in the garbage, right? But when through faithfulness and just steadiness and being there, we over time you can be known. We're going to begin to be known as the person who cares, right? Who I can speak to. And one of my I've got a lot of stories. One of my favorite stories is I was in a bowling alley with a couple one time. And, a number of years ago, and I was, we're just having a good old time, and I look over and I can see all these hardcore kids, and they're all metaled up and tattooed up, and I can see they're looking over at me, and I knew that they knew I was the iMatter guy. So, they were several lanes down, but, they didn't do anything. Finally, I said, you know what? I just went over and just sat down with them and just said, hey, I see you over here looking, you must come to iMatter. They just explode, right? Just because I took 10 minutes out of my time, and this is not a great Dave King story. I want to. This is what we do, right? This is what you do. It's what our listeners do. Let's take and in particular for our kids, right? Heart support. We're looking at a demographic 10 to 34, but it's a pedal to the pond. Really looking at impacting kids early on in their development years. To say, hey, you value me. I mean, going to a 16, 17-year-old kid who right now intuitively thinks that the world's against them, right? And all the adults are abusers, and they are stupid. And if they watch the news, they're probably deeply offended by the rhetoric coming out of our national elected leaders, right? So they don't know if there's any adult they can trust probably in their lives. A lot of young people, and so you go over and just say, hey. I really like, for me, I could sit down. I had iMatter. So, sure enough, I asked them what bands they want, and one of the girls says Miss May I. And, this is one of our favorite bands. I love these guys. And so, I looked at her, and I just winked, and I said, stay tuned, and went right back and, called my guy and said, hey, contact Miss May I and tell him I want him. And sure enough, we have Miss May I come to the festival, and I'm at the festival, and the girl sees me. She comes over. You got Miss May I? I said, yeah, and you're going to introduce him. And so we got a chance to bring this young lady up on the stage, introduce her favorite bands. It was great.
Oh, that's amazing.
The moral of the story is for us to take the time to go over and tell a young person, hey, I like your hair, I like your shoes. Or I'm a dude. So, like, for me, I'm going to find a different way to do it. I'm probably not going to go up to, a young person and say, I like their hair, I like their shoes. I might go up to a young guy and give him knuckles. I said, you got, and my favorite thing is to go up to a young guy and say, you got a good way about you, man, and just leave it at that. And, have them, like, give you the look and, like, say, what? And, have them look at you like, you're from Mars. and I've accomplished everything I need to accomplish. You're right. I am from Mars, and this guy from Mars thinks you got a good way about you, and I just leave it at that. But I planted a seed that, hey,
yes,
this guy came over and told me I've got a good way about me. That I may never see that kid again, right?
yes.
But
you left an
something took
impact.
place there. Right.
Yeah.
This is what I want to say to you. You know, let's not buy the narrative. The cultural narrative says we walk with blinders on and we don't acknowledge, you know, the people we're doing this life with. We all have. This is our time to steward this earth. This is our time to steward the planet. It's our time to steward relationships. Let's take this thing serious, man. Let's do this well.
Yes. It's a great message.
I don't think we hear that message coming from you know our the people in the so-called power. But you know what? So what?
Nope.
You know, we can do it.
Yep, we
can do it.
The light workers of the world. You're one of them.
That's right. Yeah. And, you know, keep our sense of humor, too, man. If we can't laugh, I mean, we're probably in trouble.
I agree. You know? It's so funny because I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine today, and we were joking about things that we post on Facebook. I'm like, mine are all psychology, spirituality, educational, or funny. That's about it.
I love your Facebook posts, Jessica. I've kind of your stuff. Oh yeah, I follow what you're doing. I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
Oh,
I love
thanks.
I love you being real. You're raw. You're real. You're honest.
That's true.
That's what the world needs.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, and you too. Yeah, we can definitely have you on again any other time. You know, maybe with Scott. But I love what you guys are doing, and you know, I like to. It's great to hear what you're doing, and then have you on again just to like get the updates. You know, I know you guys are rapidly evolving, and there's so much going on, and with the shows, I'm excited. I think it's fantastic, and you're giving so many people who feel hopeless, you know, a place, a home, and a connection. So there's nothing more important than that. I love it.
Well, thank you for what you're doing as well. It's important work, and I love the concept that we're starting to maybe, you know, bond country to country, right?
That's
instead of being isolated. Super important. You know,
yes, I thought.
Quit looking at each
however
other as
I
enemies,
can help.
or at least not as friends. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. However I can help you guys on this side of the pond, just let me know. I'm all for it. You know, we can promote over here.
Well, you never know. We may visit you sometime. You never know. We're not messing around.
That's great. That's good to hear. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, and I just deep down know that a lot of people are going to take away a lot of important messages from this today, and I think it was just such a great topic. You know, a lot of people don't know a lot about what's going on in the minds of an addict or somebody who's at suicide risk, so I think you gave them a lot of insight, so we appreciate that.
Great. Well, it's a great honor, Jessica. I really appreciate the invite.
Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Have a good night.
Okay. You too.
Okay.
Bye.
Yep, bye.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in on A Billion Realities, and we'll see you in the next show. Thank you for joining us today on A Billion Realities. Please stay tuned for next Wednesday's show at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time or 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Take care, everyone.